Right, okay. So what we're going to do today, we're going to actually talk about how we can make a community garden. So it's very much developing onto for what we did last week. So I'm just going to go through it a little bit about last week. In fact, I've actually got some more information from the hydrogen house. So I'll finish with a little tiny video at the end of this, rather than put it at the beginning. But primarily I want to talk a little bit about the workshop that we're doing next week, which is at the ELU on the 8th of March. And then we'll go through a demonstration regarding developing the community garden. So I'll create a load of slides to go with this, so there'll be a PDF for that. So next week's workshop is at the 8th of March, starting at 10 o'clock and finish at 4 o'clock. So in the morning we've got an activity and a workshop 2. So the activity is talking about sketch drawing, and the activity and the workshop is actually using SketchUp to create. It's not create a community garden. I'm doing that today. We'll be doing some different but then we're going to have a lunch break, and then in the afternoon, workshop 3 is we're going to look at animation and how we can use the layout book to publish the final design. And so that takes to 3:30. So hopefully we'll be all done and dusted by 4 o'clock. Directions, you don't need directions. You have already been there, Patricia, so I don't need to go into explain where that is. But what I like you to do, I don't know if you got access to these materials, and don't worry about it, I can bring them anyway. For the sketch exercise, you need to bring a layout pad with you, a couple of pencils and some fine lighter pens, and a couple of colour marker pens, probably a light yellow or a grey, and that would be brilliant. Okay, but what we'll end up doing is that we'll be this is the site that we looked at last week, and if you remember when we plotted the site out, is that we had these community gardens. We had 1, 2, we had 3 of them. So what I've done is I've highlighted this one area here itself, and today what we're going to do, we're going to model that up. So if you want to practice anything beforehand, there's an A4 PDF, and I put a 2-meter grid onto that. I put some scale stuff on there so you understand about sizes and everything else, so you can actually scale out and actually sketch out your ideas. So like everything else that we do is know that before we start modeling, we need to actually formulate our ideas on paper first. So what we're going to do today, we're going to go into SketchUp, we're going to create a community garden. So we're going to have buildings, we're going to have some planters into there, but there's things when you're thinking of designing a community garden, or what kind of things that you need to consider. One of the factors, obviously, we need to create a toilet in there that needs to be compliant with the DDA regulations. We need to consider having washing machines, so we can service that by having grey water and rainwater harvesting. So by having a sedum roof onto the building itself, we can use that to control the water flow when it does rain. We can also use the raised planters to actually gather the water up, and then we can feed that actually into an underground tank. We can also include things like permeable paving. So again, it allows for water to actually filter through. We can create spaces for cycle stands, and then we can add some benches and seatings and probably a gazebo, and then to actually have some include a children's play area, all within that zone itself. So, this little tiny one idea that I came up with, whereas we have our bike stands, we have our footpath, we have our planters. At the end here, I've got some PVs, solar collectors, and underneath these planters are a series of rainwater harvesting tanks that will gather the water up, and therefore we can use that to actually for flushing the toilets and for the washing machines. And likewise, we can take the water from the washing machines and also use that for flushing the toilets as well. So the whole thing literally becomes self-servicing in a lot of sense. So where we're going to start off with, there is a model file which I've created, which has got the area the rectangle here, which is 15 meters by 20 meters. There's a footpath on the model itself, and then put a bit of landscaping around the space. And so what we're going to do, we need to look at the tags, the components, the scenes, and the groups. First thing that we need to think about is to just check the model information is correct. And so by going into model information and going to the units, we can change the format to decimal, and then we can choose the lengths, the areas, and the volumes. And then we can actually decipher the precision for each of those. Other things that we can do is we can actually focus on the geolocation, so that when we are doing analysis, we can actually bring our model and we can actually pinpoint it exactly where it wants to be from a geological point of view. And so by going on to geolocation, and the factor is that we can actually type in the area that we want to, it allows us to scroll into it, and then what happens is you can see here is the Docklands area itself. Our site area is down here, so we'll just simply drag it so that positions it within our model, and then we'll just add that to our model itself. And so we can actually create that within the model itself. It's there, but we can control the tags. We can actually lose it within the tags, so we can control exactly what we're seeing. So the first things that we're going to start doing is actually modeling up where the footpath's going to be. So by using the tape measure, we can define where the center points are, and then we can use the pencil tool to actually set out where the footpath's going to be. And then we can then elevate the footpath up, and then add the material to it, and then we can actually do a little bit of stretching to extend exactly where we want it to be. So we go through this kind of processes where we can have this kind of space. So my footpaths are all 2.4 meters wide. I've got a length down one side which is about 9 meters. I've extended out the other side by another 3 meters. So that's the kind of thing that you can do. Then you can put it out from there. For the to create the planters, again, what happens is we can use the tape measure tool to actually define our setting out points. We can extract areas out, and then once we've got the planters itself, we can then elevate them up. But before we do that, we might want to do a bit of editing to get the shape right. So we might start off with a rectangle, but we can actually turn them into different shapes. And so consequently is, if you look at the illustration, what I've got, I have 4 planters here. These two have this kind of curved end, and the other 2 are left rectangular. And so by extruding it and then using the offset tab, we can then create the planter and then just apply our materials to it. Importing materials then basically by going into the 3D warehouse. So for today's exercise, I've gone for this with our playground, and so literally by going to the 3D warehouse, typing in play equipment, selecting the one you want, and then you can import it directly into the model itself. So likewise, so what we can do, we can then create all this. We can the sum object, which I've already created and put into the base file itself. So for example, the fencing that goes around, I've already dropped that in. This little tiny building I've put in, this little gazebo, I've actually created and added that to the base file. So it just saves you from having to do that itself. And then what happens is we can go into the scenes and we can create a scene for 4 scenes, so we can actually view through it, and that will then compile our composition for our model. Okay, I'll come back to this little video at the very end. Remember last week we were talking about the hydrogen house, and so basically that Alex is the young lady you see in the picture here. Alex actually sent me some links through. I was hoping to get them from last week, but they didn't come in time, so I've added them on today's, and then you can go on to that. Okay, so let me just end that show. Let me come into right. So here is our completed model that I've created. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, if we look what we have, we've got a series of layouts, and the factor is if I rotate through, we have all these trees, and therefore what happens is we can actually, and because they are 2D objects, so they're always designed to actually face the camera. So as we rotate, those trees will always face the camera at all times. Right, so what I'm going to do, we're just going to go to the top drawing. There's my finished model, and here's one, as you say, that I created earlier. I'm just going to go back to my camera tool and just drop into parallel projection. So I'm looking directly on the top. Just let me go through a little bit of bases, which I talked about earlier on. One of the things that we need to check, particularly when we import a model, we need to make sure that the settings are correct for it. So if I go into Window and if I go into Model Info, you can see that there's things that we can adjust. So we have the Dimension tool. So I can choose the dimensions. One of the things that we need to make sure on the Dimension tool is that they are always aligned above the line itself. Sometimes in America they have it underneath or through the middle, but here in the UK the dimensions are always above the line. The other thing that we'll do regarding the units is to make sure that that the units that we're using, so the default might be architectural, but if I go into architectural, what it is, you see everything is actually is imperial. So I need to change from architectural to go to decimal, and now what I can do is I have lengths in meters, areas in millimeters, and volume in meters. So let me just change that to meter square, and then levels of precision. Well, to be honest with you, when you're working in millimeters, you don't need to go 6 points beyond it. It's not necessary. Okay, so we can actually focus on each of those and to set it up properly. The other thing that we need to think about, particularly when we're going to start carrying out analysis of the site itself, we can actually we can actually select the location. So consequently, what we can do, we can click on N to clear the location. We can add more imagery to the location itself, or we can actually set that location itself. I'm not going to go into that right now. We can touch on that in a little bit more depth next week, the workshop. But predominantly, this is critical. So obviously what happens is regarding the site that we've selected, you can see that we have a latitude and we have a longitude setting. And when we carry out sun studies and environmental assessments, that is actually vastly important. So the factor is if we don't have that, then it's not in the right place. So that's just a couple of things regarding the model info. Right, okay. So let's just start modeling up this site a little bit, okay? So I'm just going to run a couple of dimensions on the side just to show you what we have. Let me click dimension. Yeah, let me bring it to there. It's 14.2 meters. It's always good to check your dimensions. So there we go. Yeah, so it's it's fairly accurate. Okay. So now what happens is I want to use that for check purposes. Don't keep your dimensions on. Literally, just get rid of them. Okay. So that's the first thing. The second thing I want to do is I want to get a center point. So if I use the tape measure tool itself, so you can see that what happens, it picks up that center point, and then I can pick it up from there to there, and I can bring a line across. So I can judge where my center points are going to be from my model at any one time. I can be specific. I can come from the edge. I can say, right, let me come in 7500 and type enter. It's giving me my center point from there, and I can bring in my next center point from there. So what I've got, so there's two ways of bringing dimensions in, and that's purely because what I want to have, I want to actually have a footpath that's going to be within the center of my model itself. So if I look at this just in 3D view, you can see we have these kind of default lines that I can model through. Now I can keep in 3D, or I can go into 2D, back to the plan view, and actually apply my my pen line. So if I go to the pen line here, if I start from this point 1, let me come along the center point there of 1, 2, 0, 0, and hit enter. What happens is, you can see now I'm going to use my green lines. Yeah, so that line there is 9.9 meters long. So I can come to that point itself. Let me come way beyond that. So let me come some in the region of about 16 meters that way. And 0, enter, and I'm going to come back, dotted line. I'm going to come on again, another 1, 2, 0, 0, enter. And so consequently, what I can do, it gives me my space. Okay, so let me continue. Let me come on this side, 1.2. Let me come from there to here. I'm going to come, I'm not too concerned overlapping the footpath, 2, 4, 0, 0, enter, and then I can go back from there to get into the edge. And again, what happens is I could come up the back end. So let me come up the back end here of 3000, enter, let me come through, 2, 4, 0, 0, enter. And so consequently what I'm doing is I'm being quite specific regarding the shapes that I've got. Okay, so if I decide to erase that little line there, that little line there, and that line there, what it's giving me is this kind of shape. If I choose, I want to actually curve the end a bit. I'm getting very cocksure with myself here now, and there you go. I can put a radius onto the end. So you don't need to be in squares, but one thing you do need to make sure that you do is when you extend spaces that you do extend them through. Okay, so what I'm going to, so if I go to my materials, let me take go from building cladding, let me go to landscape surfacing, and I'm just going to pick a slightly different material from the one that will be used outside. So I'm going to pick pavers, driveways, that's fine, that's going to do me, and I'm going to click on voila. Okay, so I've got all my material for my footpath, and then what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to lift it up. I'm just going to pull it up some in the region about 50 millimeters. Okay, so you notice everything that I'm doing is actually all in millimeters. If I wanted to extend some of the paving through, so if I let me rotate my model itself, let me just take a line out. I'm just going to drop a line. I want a blue line, excuse me. Fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do this. I'm going to pull it. Okay. So you see I have an edge here. I can pull that edge that little bit further forward now. Okay. So you have the choice of going in 2D and 3D to actually manipulate the size and the shape of your paving area itself. Right, okay, fine. So let us just come back onto the plan view so you can see that we have that kind of space. Let me go into 3D. Let me just model it through a wee bit more. Oops, daisy, escape that. Bingo. Right. And so what I'm going to do now is I want to actually add some planters to each of these spaces itself. So if I rotate it round, okay, and again what happens is I can use the line tool. I want to select it at this point, so let me come along to the bottom edge here. So let me come along 6 meters, that point. In fact, what I should do is use the tape measure first. Let me use the tape measure first. Okay. Come 6,000. Enter. Then coming out on the red marker, I can come out $3,000, enter. And so consequently what I'm doing is I'm using my, you see I have these green lines, yeah, because that tells me I'm on the settings. And so if I look at this on 2D from the top view, you can see where my lines are. You can see, there we go, fine. That's what I was looking for. So if I put a pencil line into here, to there, come down to that side, you can see that what I have one planter into that space. Let's have a look at that in 3D. It's down here on the ground. Let me go back into the plan view. Let me just take the tape measure tool. Escape. That wasn't the tape measure tool, that was the line tool. Tape measure tool. Because bear in mind, we're using the tape measure tool for one reason only, and that is only just so that we can actually be accurate. Let me make that 3,000. And so consequently what I'm doing, I'm just using the tape measure here just to map out my areas within my planter itself. Okay, so what I can do is I can then take that in 3D. I can then apply my lines to here. Do the same to that one. And simply what I have my 3 areas itself. If I wanted to go, let me go in. So I no longer require those kind of guidelines. So let me just go to edit and delete guides. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to round this corner off onto here. So if I use the arc tool before I extract, so let me come along and then use the eraser to get rid of the bit that I don't want. Similar to that. Let me do the same onto the other side. So you want to, any shapes that you're going to change, you really want to do it before you start before you actually start extruding it up, okay? Because this is a 3D object. So at the moment we just create something which is fairly flat. Other things I can do, I don't need to. I'm just going to keep this for the time being, okay? But the point is that we can use the squiggle tools, we can use the line tools, we can manipulate those lines, so we can actually create whatever we want to do. But the important thing is that when you do it, you want to do it really before you start extruding upwards. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push. So let me pull this planter up. Yeah. Let me bring it up to a height of 600 millimeters. One of the things that we want to think about is the reason why we're creating raised planters. Two reasons, right? Is if you're trying to create a space which is inclusive for all. One of the things that we find, if you go to a supermarket, is that sometimes they have stuff at a very low shelf, and they have stuff in the supermarket which are at a very high shelf. What was actually sort of defined is really the optimum height of product in supermarkets for all ages is anything between 450 millimeters up to 1350. Anything higher or lower than that, then people actually have issues, particularly as they are getting older. And it infuriates me when I go into supermarkets and I see shelves literally above 2 meters high with product onto it. That is just dangerous. But you know, it's the life that it's the world that we have at the moment. So enough of the history. 600 mil, and let me pull the last one up, and let's make that one 600 millimeters as well. Okay, enter. Okay, right. Next, I'm going to I can apply my material to all of this all at once. Or I can apply them to the various edges. I'll do that one in a second. So let me offset the edge. So let me pull the offset in. So let's just make the thickness of this planter 200 millimeters. Do the same here. So you can see that it's highlighting when I'm selecting the surface. And because I've got this curve into it, you see that what it's doing, it's actually bringing it nicely within that kind of within the parameters. So I'd have to think about, oh, what is the difference? So let me just take the top surface and let me just push it down. So probably about 75 millimeters. So let me do that to all of them. I'm sure Mita's going to tell me that there's a shortcut onto all of this.
There is.
Yeah, there is. Well, fine. Well, you tell me this tomorrow. 75 millimeters. Yeah. So what's the shortcut, Mita? What should I have done?
Just double click. Once you do a command with the push pull,
yeah.
If it's the same command you want to use on one of the other planters, all you have to do is just double click it.
Right.
It remembers your last command.
It does, right. Okay. Thank you. Well, I'll remember that. So consequently then, so if I then take the paint bucket, yeah. Let me go from that. Let me just go to cladding and siding. Yeah. Let me just take something like that cladding material. Yeah. And so if I apply that to that surface, yeah, so I can just click on and surface all of those.
Hold the shift key down,
yeah,
and it will.
Yeah. So hold the shift. So hold the shift key. That'll do them all.
Yes. So go to a white surface.
Yeah, like that.
Round. That's it.
Fantastic. There you go. Thank you, Mita. That's what makes Mita. That's why Mita's the expert, and I'm just the learner.
No.
Okay, fine. So there are our planters that we have within the model itself. Okay. Right. Next. So we've got our basic structure. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to populate this model with some of the objects which I brought in. Okay, so let us just go into if I go into my reduce materials down, let me go into right. The other thing that if you notice, if you look at my tags, I've got one for site landscape, I've got for the play area, I've got for people. I've got the geolocation one switched off at the moment. If I switch that back on again, what it does, if I just scroll out and just come back onto plan view, you can see this is my second model. On my first model, I've got located exactly where my site is. So can you see there is the site for the Royal Docks with our garden positioned exactly where we want it to be as far as geolocation is concerned. So I'm just going to switch that back off again. Okay. So the great thing is about using the tags, it gives us a lot greater control. Okay. Likewise, is in the model I created, I put a boundary fence onto it. Okay, so temporarily, so that I can model stuff up and get into it, be where I want to be, I can actually allocate my fence and see exactly where. So I can take it, I can lose it, I can bring it back in again. Couple more things that we're going to do. Right. So in my components file, if I go to components, what happens is we've already got people into the components. So let me just bring this little group that I have brought in the files. Let me see what other things I've got into here. Let me just bring a few people in. There's some bicycles in there somewhere. Where have they gone to? Bicycles. Come on. Fine. There we are. Fine. Okay. So what happens is we can put these within our position of our model. Okay. And so the factor is we can rotate to make sure that they are exactly set within it. And you see what happens is look at the children with the dog. As we rotate, they're always facing the camera. Obviously, the 3D objects are 3D objects, but so we have that. Let me bring in some other components. I also created a little house as well. I seem to have lost my house a little bit. There we go. Fine. So there's the house. So I can bring that and cite that within my model. Okay. Itself. So I can drop it and drag it and position the house itself. Let me just check it. So this is a house which I made earlier on. Okay, so I may need to move it back a wee bit. I may need to actually change its size. So let me just drag it across. Okay, so perhaps what I've done is I've probably made these planters a bit too big, but I can push the object back. But I think you get the gist as to what I'm trying to do. We could actually made a model off-site and actually made our own model. I've done that just purely for convenience for today itself, and so consequently is I can edit this planter, and I can also, if I go into the model itself and I click on to scale, you can see that what it enables me to do, I can scale my model back, yeah, so I can make it fit within the space that I have. Likewise, I can drag it, I can extend it outwards on both sides. Let me just rotate around, yeah. So let me just, okay, so I have my little tiny the principle behind this is to create a washing area with toilet inside, so it needs to be big enough to accommodate the space. Need to escape. And so I have my little shed. Okay, and then finally, what happens is let us, before we finish populating the scene itself, and I'll go back to the one I've already created. And I'm just going to drag stuff across from the other model that I've created. So if I want to import a play area, go to the 3D warehouse, type in playground equipment. And so I'm going to go for a slightly different one than I did last time. So this is the one I brought into one model. Let me bring this one in. Yeah. So let me go download. Yes. And it asks if you the opportunity, do you want to load this directly into your SketchUp model? Yes, I do. And you can see I have this play area, which is probably a bit bigger than the one I had before. Okay. So I can get it, I can position it, I can actually drop it into place itself. Okay. And so I can allocate it. Yeah. And so you see where this one is located. I need to bring it down. Yeah. And I can set it within my model itself. Okay. I can edit the scale. I can shrink it down a wee bit. Okay. So that's how we bring it in. Let me just delete this one. Okay. And what I'm going to do is, so consequently, let me just go back in and let me open up my layers. Components down, and let me put in down here. Let me put the fence back in again. Voila. Okay. So you can see that what I have now, I have my fence. Within there, I have my object. I can bring in more people into the scene. And so eventually what happens is, so if I look at the one that I've already created, you can see that I have all these trees. So let me move, let me edit, let me copy, let me edit and paste. And so I have the trees which I can push into place. Let me go back and do a bit closer. Yeah. Voila. Okay. So I have all those trees within the model. Let me do the same. Let me hit escape. And now I can do the same with my greenhouse, and I can bring my children's play area. So consequently what happens is that we can populate our model very quickly. So here we are, you know, we have the scene. We start off with the sketch work, we've got our materials, and so consequently is, you know, that we have people within there. So if I go to each of my scenes, yeah, there we go. I have each of those areas. Now, one of the things that you will notice is that when we brought this objects in, all these trees actually had a bounding box. So you see that this tree here has still got its bounding box onto it. So if I go into edit component, and if I select this one and hit the shift key down, Meter's going to correct me now. Okay. Yeah.
You're still not in the component.
I'm still not in the component. Thank you, Meter. Yeah.
That's it now.
Yeah.
Now double click.
Yeah.
Double click the tree.
Yeah. Hold my shift key down, use the eraser. Yeah. And I bet this is going to delete my tree. Right, okay. So I've done that. Now I hit escape.
Yep. Now space bar and then escape.
Voila.
And then escape.
There you go.
Perfect.
You see? Thank you, Meter. And hit escape again.
You're
Yeah. And close component. There we go. Okay, so you can see that my tree has no longer got those lines onto it. And that's how you get rid of them, guys. Okay? Thank you. Right. Thank you, Meter. You're a star.
You're welcome.
Okay, fine. So let me just, so that concludes our little webinar for today. Let me just play this because I know that we're a bit, it's about 6 minutes long. But what happens is that this is the Northern Gas hydrogen hydrogen house. So there are a series of links. YouTube tell you about the project itself, which I hope will be of value to you. And then so I've given the advert regarding next week's workshop. So look forward to seeing you next week, Patricia. The next webinar that we're going to be doing in 2 weeks' time, on the 16th of March, is going to be an introduction to Saphira and environment analysis. We're also going to talk about offsite construction as well, so you understand the difference between volumetric designs and open and closed cells. Well, thank you all very much, and look forward to seeing you at the workshop next week, Patricia, and obviously and hopefully see you in 2 weeks' time as well. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Alex and I'm here at Hydrogen Homes today, which is near Gateshead. These hydrogen homes have hydrogen appliances inside them. My job is to show visitors around and show how they work differently to the normal natural gas ones that you have at home today. But before we go in, let me tell you why we're looking at possibly changing from natural gas to hydrogen. The gas we currently use to heat our homes is called methane and is often referred to as natural gas. It releases carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, which is causing climate change. Up to a third of the UK's carbon dioxide emissions come from the gas used by industry and in our homes to heat and cook. To meet the government's target to achieve net zero by 2050, we need to change the gas we use. Hydrogen can replace natural gas because it doesn't create any carbon when used. Switching to hydrogen will allow us to heat and cook in the same way, but with a gas which is more environmentally friendly. This is the first time the UK has explored the opportunity of using 100% hydrogen. Prior to the 1960s, the UK used Towns gas, which comprised up to 50% hydrogen before a national conversion programme to natural gas or methane. We've been carrying out research in recent years to ensure a hydrogen network will be as safe as today's natural gas network. Following the completion of safety research, the government has committed to pilot using 100% hydrogen in communities. To do this, houses will need to be fitted with appliances similar to those showcased in the hydrogen homes. So, let's take a closer look at the hydrogen home. Follow me! This meter looks really similar to the meters that we use today, and it works in the same way. To create the same amount of energy as natural gas, we do need to use a little bit more hydrogen. The sensor in this meter enables it to measure today's methane, 100% hydrogen, or a blend of hydrogen and methane. This means that customers could upgrade to a hydrogen-ready meter ready for a future hydrogen conversion. We use hydrogen hobs in exactly the same way as today's natural gas hobs. You start the hob and control the size of the flame in the same way. The main difference you will notice is the colour of the flame. When it's first lit, the flame is less visible, but after a short time it warms up and becomes orange. We call it the sunflower flame. You can use the same pans and utensils as with your existing cooker. Like many modern hobs, a safety light shows when the gas is lit, and there is a flame failure device that cuts off the gas if the flame isn't lit or goes out. We've cooked lots of delicious meals on here, including curries, stir fries and fried eggs, and they cook in exactly the same way as when using natural gas. Hydrogen ovens look exactly the same as gas ovens from today, and we use them in exactly the same way. The temperature range is identical. You can use the same cooking equipment and food cooks at the same temperature in the same time. The main thing that you'll notice is that the flame is a different colour. It's very pale when it's first lit and becomes orange as it heats up. There is a safety cut-off valve which shuts off the gas if the flame goes out or it doesn't light. We've cooked fabulous pizzas, mince pies, biscuits and Yorkshire puddings on this 100% hydrogen appliance. Boilers provide hot water and central heating. Your boiler at home uses methane, whereas this boiler uses hydrogen. It looks the same and it works the same, but because it uses hydrogen, it doesn't emit any carbon dioxide. Because methane and hydrogen burn at different rates, the burners are different. The boilers here at Hydrogen Home are actually 100% hydrogen ready boilers. This means that they run on methane like your boiler at home and can be converted to hydrogen if hydrogen is made available in your local area. Leading boiler manufacturers have promised that hydrogen-ready boilers won't cost any more than today's boilers when manufactured at scale. To convert the boiler, a gas engineer will replace some parts, which takes about an hour. It's likely you won't need to replace any radiators, which makes switching to hydrogen quick and easy. This fire runs on hydrogen instead of methane, but you use it in exactly the same way. Just like the latest gas fires, you control the fire by remote control. It has a different burner to allow for a different flow of gas and air, but has a safety control which cuts off the gas supply very rapidly if the flame goes out. The main difference you'll notice is the colour of the flame. Hydrogen is very pale when the fire is first lit, and the flame becomes a flickering orange colour as it warms up. So that's Hydrogen Home. I really hope that you've enjoyed your visit here today and seen the hydrogen appliances in action. I hope it's given you a glimpse into the future about how you can live in a very similar way but without emitting any carbon from your boiler or your appliances. If you would like to know more or even come down and see me, please drop me an email at hydrogenhome@northerngas.co.uk.